Good day, good people. My name is Gaba Sekwele and I am an online math tutor here to help young children turn their struggles into their successes. Today's topic is examinations, math examinations to be precise. Now, math exams are a test, an examination of your child's skill level in math. But for many children, math exams are their worst nightmare. So today we're going to discuss why. Why are math exams so difficult? And we're also going to discuss what your child can do to do well in these math exams. Now, obviously, there are quite a few reasons why math exams are a challenge, but today we're going to focus mainly on the types of questions in a math exam that your child will be faced with. Please keep in mind, I am not a professional examiner. This video is simply based on my own observations and my own experiences and the things that my students have experienced when writing exams. The first type of question your child will be faced with when writing exams is questions that give you clues on how to solve the problem. Now, these are the type of questions where the instruction is clear. Your child is told what to do. Your child doesn't necessarily have to figure out what to do to solve the problem. They've already been told what to do. They just now need to implement that method. And this is actually quite easy because this is exactly what they do in class and in their homework. They're told what to do, they just have to do it. For children in middle school, an example of a question like that is this one. The instruction is to divide using long division. Again, your child doesn't need to think about what to do, they just need to know how to divide using the method of long division. Essentially, the only thing your child is being tested on is whether or not they know the method of long division. And how well they do answers that question. Now, for someone in high school, an example of this type of question would be the one that you see on your screen. Again, the instruction is clear, especially for in those higher grades. Factorize. They don't have to ask themselves what to do. They've been told what to do. Now they just need to do it. The only thing they are being tested on is whether or not they know how to factorize. Again, this is easy because they've been taught to factorize in class all the time. So there's nothing really complex about this. Really, this question is the easiest type of question because the exam is asking them if they have a bare minimum skill. They don't have to think about anything. They just need to know how to use a specific method that they learn in class all the time. Now, if your child is not doing well with these type of questions, they are struggling with basic skills in math because it's basically like a copy and paste of the work that they do in class. These questions are testing whether they know methods, and these methods can really be viewed as tools to help them solve even more difficult problems that they'll have to face later on in the exam, which we'll discuss in the next few minutes. Now, let's imagine you're a mechanic. In order for you to solve certain problems in your job, you need to know how to use certain tools to solve the problem. So these questions essentially are asking you questions like, do you know how to use a spanner? Do you know how to use a wrench? If you're a mechanic, of course. That's what these questions are testing. And if you don't know how to use these tools, there's no way you'll be able to solve bigger problems. So that's exactly what these questions are asking. Do you know how to divide using long division? Do you know how to factorize? These are just tools to help you solve problems in the future. And if you don't know how to use these tools, you won't be able to solve the problems that are upcoming in this test or this exam. If your child struggles with these type of questions, basically your child is like a mechanic who comes to work with a toolbox full of tools that he doesn't know how to use. So there's another type of problem. A mechanic can go to work and he may know how to use all the tools in his toolbox, but is he able to deduce when he should use which tools? That is the next type of question that your child will be faced with. These questions are the ones that test whether your child knows which tool to use, even though they're not clearly telling you to use this tool. Now, these type of questions don't tell your child which tool to use, but the only way to solve this problem would be to use this tool. So it tests whether your child is able to use their reasoning and can decide for themselves which tools to use in order to solve which problems. So yes, basically these questions test whether your child knows when to use certain tools. And this is a challenge. It really is a challenge because you can only know when to use specific tools when you have a good understanding of mathematics. When you have to decide for yourself which tool to use when you're not told, your child needs to have a good understanding of the subject and experience in the subject in order to know when to use which tools when they're not told to use those tools. Many times mechanics are faced with a problem and they're not told which tools to use. They themselves need to decide which tool to use to solve this problem. The only way he can do that well is if he understands the car or whatever machine he's trying to fix. So there is value in knowing both how to use a tool and when to use a tool, especially when he's not told which tool to use and the tool that he does decide on using actually solves the problem. That's when we know that he is good at his job. So in the same way, your child needs to have the ability to choose certain methods, certain tools to solve certain problems without being told which tools to use. That's how we know that their level and understanding of mathematics is advanced. Here's an example of such a question for a child that is in middle school. Now, this example can be viewed as an easier version of this type of question, simply because your child will only need one tool to solve this problem, and that tool is division. So this is kind of like an easier version of this type of question. An example of a question like this for someone who's in high school is something like this. Again, the question is telling you to solve a problem, but it's not telling you which tool you can use to solve the problem. Now, in this case, the only tool you can use to find the value of x is by factorizing. Again, this is an easier version of this type of question for children that are in high school because only one tool is needed in order to solve the problem. But there are instances where more than one tool will be needed in order to solve a problem, which is what makes these type of questions harder, because the examiner is not going to tell you which tools, nor are they going to tell you that you need multiple tools to solve the problem. Your child needs to figure that out for themselves, and that's what makes these type of questions even more of a challenge. For example, for a child that is in middle school, an example of that type of question would be this one. This question can be considered hard because you need two tools in order to solve the problem. You'll need to multiply and you will need to subtract in order to get your final answer. This question is a bit more challenging because nobody is telling them what tool to use, and nobody's telling them how many tools to use to solve the problem. Your child needs to figure that out for themselves. So for many young people, this is an issue because they don't realize that they actually need multiple tools to solve this one problem. Many young people get so frustrated in an exam because they think maybe there's one specific method that they can use to solve this problem. But they don't realize that they will need a series of tools, a series of methods to help them get to their final answer. But the only way you can know something like that is if you understand the subject and if you are able to reason on the subject and if you have experience with the subject. Now, an example like this for a high school student would be a question like this. Now, your child is going to need multiple tools in order to solve this problem. They would need to factorize, they would need to use the laws of exponents as a tool, and they would also have to subtract. All these tools would eventually lead them to their final answer. Now, if you're a parent watching this, you probably don't know all of the terms that I just mentioned, or you don't remember all of the terms that I just mentioned, and that's fine. I'm just mentioning them so you can see that there's no one method that can be used to solve this problem. There's no one tool that can be used to solve this problem. You would need to use a variety of tools to solve these problems, but you need to decide for yourself which tools to use. No one specific technique that your teacher should be teaching your child in order to solve this type of problem. No. And that's actually a thought that many children have after writing a very difficult exam and they see something that they've never seen before. They always say, "We never did that in class," or "Our teacher never taught us this," or something along those lines. The truth is, if your child has been taught methods and if your child has been taught the basics, they technically have everything they need in order to solve these complex questions, these complex problems. It is just their responsibility to train themselves, to teach themselves, to know when to use tools and in which situations to use these tools, not just one, but multiple tools. These very difficult questions are just a combination of different parts of math. Therefore, in order to solve these problems, they would need a combination of tools from these different parts of math. It's all just a combination of the basics that their teacher most probably did teach them. They now need to go the extra mile, practicing past papers, learning more about math, so they can build their ability to decide for themselves when to use which tools to solve what problems. So parents, in summary, in a math exam, your child will be tested with a variety of questions, different types of questions. The first type that we discussed are the easy questions because your child is told what to do in order to solve the problem. All your child needs to do is just remember the steps in a specific method that they were already taught in class. So not much thinking needed. The second type of question is a challenge because they are not told which methods to use to solve the problem. They now need to decide for themselves which tools to use to solve a problem. So not only do they now have to remember the steps in a method, but they need to choose which method they need to use, which is what makes it harder than the first type that we discussed. Now, these questions can get even harder when you have to solve a problem with more than one tool, because not only do you have to think of one tool that you need to use to solve a problem, you need to now think of 2 or even 3 tools, maybe even 4 tools that you will need to solve a problem. So this can prove to be very challenging for your child. The more they practice math and the more they improve their understanding of the subject, the easier that skill becomes. It's just a skill. It's one that they can improve over time. So to improve this skill, encourage your child to practice a lot of word problems. Word problems in every single branch of math. Also encourage them to practice questions that are very difficult, very challenging, because the more they practice those type of questions, the better they become at solving those type of questions and the more equipped they are for these math exams. Parents, thank you so much for watching this video. I hope it was informative. If you are in search of someone to help your child improve their skills in math, then schedule a free consultation with me there. Thank you once more, and I'll see you in the next video.